Welcome back to the Room 104 podcast. This is your host, Shanti. Don't forget the Monty. I have a very special guest. This woman is very, very important to me because she was the first person to recognize my talent and turned it into a skill set. This is Miss Adrienne Alvarez Jackson. Welcome to Room 104. She is my drama teacher from, what, 8th grade? 6th grade? Until...
Yeah, I mean, way back. Way back.
Way back.
We gotta go deep, way back into the deep recesses of the past. Yeah, because I was in junior high drama, and I think I met you when you were in 6th grade.
Yes,
Right.
we met 6th grade. We're gonna get into the nitty gritty of who you are. I was too young to ask you questions about who you were and to know more in depth about you. But I was always curious how you got into acting and what made you become a drama teacher. What sparked your interest in the field and in the arts?
Well, what sparked the madness, I guess. I grew up in Massachusetts, and I mean, truthfully, we had arts in my family background. My dad was a professional dancer. He was a ballroom dancer. My mother's parents were ballet dancers, so there was a lot of movement. My aunt had gone to drama school, I think, in the 50s, and then she got married in the 50s because that's what women did, and so she never really wrapped that up.
Yeah.
I always had these stories kind of ghosting around of the arts and the arts community. And when I was growing up in Massachusetts, my mom, we didn't have a lot of money, but she would usher at a place called the Cape Cod Melody Tent, which if anybody knows of Cape Cod, Massachusetts, it was this really huge venue in the 60s and 70s, and they would do musicals, and they would do, I don't know if they did straight plays, but they did the circus would come, and they did kids shows. And so my mom would usher, and she worked in the box office with my aunt for extra money in the summertime. And then I would get to see all the shows for free.
Oh, nice. So, look at you.
I know. And it was outdoors. It was this big circus tent.
Okay.
And I would just get my little popcorn and sit there, and I got to watch Fiddler on the Roof. And I remember that came to town, and I was super excited about that. Music Man, the old chestnuts, they came through, and I just thought an actor's life, that bohemian lifestyle, you just come into town and do the show, and then you're out of town. And I didn't think about money or anything like that, but I thought about being a storyteller, and that I think that's how I got hooked.
Okay. A lot of people that get into the business will look at it and go oh, I just want the glitz and the glamour and all the things that field can offer. But yours was more so just it was the little things that you were more attracted to. I loved how you talked about, you mentioned the lifestyle of an actor, going to a random town and just building a character from scratch. That the art of it is what it seems to me that you were more attracted to. Am I correct saying that?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I think I love the idea of that you would come to a place and a space, and this community would gather. And so I didn't know anybody really. I mean, I was just a little kid, but on the Cape, I didn't know anybody. And then all of a sudden, everyone would gather on Friday night in this big tent, and we would watch this show, and we had this shared experience that would bond us. And then we're leaving, and we feel like I know the actors and the actors know me, and it's this form of intimacy, and the community's gathered. And I just found that to be so powerful. And so I was interested in that from the beginning. I think as an artist and as a performer, but also as an audience member, always finding communities that share stories and always wanting to be somebody who shares them too.
Well said. I agree with that. What was your first acting? Excuse me, I'm talking. They want to chime in.
They have a story to tell too.
They do. I agree. Hello. What was kind of the first acting scene or play or whatever you did that kind of made you for sure say like, I want to stay in this?
That's such a good question. I'm so impressed with your question, Sean. um, you know, like I said, my dad was a dancer and my grandparents were ballet dancers, and they didn't make a lot of money.
Right.
You know, a dancer's body kind of like wears out in their early 20s, and that happened to my grandparents, and they were just determined to continue to be artists, and they really struggled. So I think I struggled. I knew that I loved acting. I knew that's where my heart was, but I was afraid to fully commit. So when I went to college, I was an English major. I did all the plays. I did as much as I could, but I didn't just fully commit because I think, I was scared. I didn't know how I would make a living. But my junior year, I was cast as Juliet in a touring production of Romeo and Juliet.
Mm-hmm.
It was Pekin Players in Central Illinois. And we rehearsed, not even kidding, we rehearsed in a livestock review building. So it was like, girls would be like moving, like circulating.
No way.
And we had our platforms, 110 in the middle of the summer in Pekin in the livestock review building. We were doing Shakespeare. But
wow.
I loved it. I fell in love with it. And I was like, I made my first money. I got $100 a week.
Woo!
I was rich.
Woo! You could buy so much coffee with that money. I took some time to look up your acting credentials on IMDb, and you had.
Oh my god! I don't even know that was I on IMDb. I didn't even know if I was on IMDb.
You were. I saw it. You were actually in Charmed when you got that offer. When you accepted that role, like, what was the first feeling that you got?
Truly,
be as honest. We don't pull back punches on this podcast, so go ahead and say it.
Okay. Well, I was very grateful because I went to graduate school and I studied acting, but it was back when you went to school, you just studied theater. We didn't have a lot of exposure to TV and film, which was really, I felt like at a loss when I got here to LA, because really how you're making money is with TV and film. And, it does translate, but you need to be on set to feel really comfortable, just like treading the boards. Like, the more stage time you have, the more comfortable you are. So I had only been on set. I did a thing on All My Children, which was a soap opera.
Mm-hmm.
It was on ABC. Anyway, I did that in New York, and I thought I was terrible. I watched it and I was like, oh, so embarrassed. My mom had my whole family watching it, and I was like, oh my God, I was awful on this. I didn't have any experience. So I was so happy to have the opportunity to not suck. I was like, please, I just don't want to suck on Charmed. Please, God. That was honestly my first thought. Don't suck.
You hear that? Everyone was out there.
With Alyssa Milano, who was like everybody's dreamboat in the 90s. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, I can't suck next to Alyssa Milano.
That's hilarious. So I'm trying to follow your timeline. So you were doing Romeo and Juliet. How old were you roughly when you were doing the Romeo and Juliet in Central Illinois?
So I went to Bradley University, which is a private school in Central Illinois.
Oh, okay.
And that's when I did Romeo and Juliet. It was between my junior and senior year in college. And then I took a year, I went and I studied in London, and I was part of the Old Globe Theater program there because obviously I was hooked on Shakespeare. And then I went to grad school from 94 to 97. So I was in school forever. And Charmed happened after graduate school. So I moved to LA after graduate school in 1997. So I went to New York. I did All My Children. I did a play. And then I moved to LA, and then I got cast in Charmed.
Got it. Okay. I'm trying to figure out what was the point where you're like, let me take a step back and let me get into instructing the younger generation on how to be performers.
I was here in LA. I was working. I had my own theater company. Things were going well. I was booking some work, but the work doesn't come, you can't just order it up. Like, you audition.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
And you hope you book a gig, and then sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. So you need to keep the tent poles up. Like, I had rent and I had a car, and my family wasn't in LA, so I was really doing it on my own. And I was able to get hired as an English teacher at a school called Alamany High School, which is in Mission Hills.
Right.
And I was there as an English teacher because obviously I love Shakespeare, I love the classics. So it was a good marriage. I had a master's degree.
Mm-hmm.
So I got hired there, and I never thought I would want to be a teacher. I mean, my roommate in college was an education major, and I was like, ugh, I will never be an education major. Ugh. I just didn't, I thought it was just so boring, and I didn't want to do it. No offense to the education majors out there. I was dumb. I should have done it back
She
then. But I was
completely
stupid.
shat on your careers, by the
I
way.
did. I was just like, I hated it. I didn't want to do it. I think, you know why? Okay, because I think in the 90s, when I was
Yeah.
going to college, it was a very safe thing for like a woman to do, is to be a teacher.
I
Because
see
then
what
you
you
could
mean.
get
Yeah.
married and have kids and be home. And that was not everybody, but philosophically, that was something that I heard a lot. And I didn't like that because that
Right.
just didn't line up with my values. So I got the job at Alamany, and I really loved it. I thought it was amazing. I love teaching the kids. I don't know if I was a really good teacher then, but I was really excited to learn. I got involved in like student government. I did some extracurricular activities with them. I was just having a ball.
Right.
And the auditions weren't coming a lot, and I wasn't doing a lot, but I just didn't care because I was so into my teaching. And then my second year there, I did book a role in Hamlet, and it was in March. So the school year hasn't wrapped up yet, and it was an equity production. So in order to do it, I had to quit my teaching job. And
Ah, that
they
sucks.
knew that I wanted to be an actor, so they knew that that was my priority at the time. But it killed me, Shant. I was a mess the last day when I had to leave. I was sobbing. I was ugly crying.
Wow.
I was a disaster, and I really I mean, I try not to use regret because you shouldn't regret things. It taught me a lot. It taught me that I really wanted to stay there. I didn't want to go do
Mm,
the show. I
mm.
didn't really want to, but I felt like I had to because I was like set up to do it.
Right. So you took what you had in that moment for granted until you were about to leave. And then you just understood the value of working with kids.
Yeah. And I thought, I'm going to do this show, like the 80 bazillionth production of Hamlet, which is fine. We should
Yeah.
be doing Hamlet. There's a lot to learn. But I was like Rosencrantz, and was I Rosencrantz or Guildenstern? I don't even remember. I was one of them. And who cares anyway? And I felt like I dropped these relationships with these amazing kids, with these wonderful students to go off and play a pretty forgettable role in a decent show. It was a decent show, but it came and it went.
Right.
Whereas building those relationships with students and creating a culture seemed to be something that was more long lasting.
That is it's so real. It's such a real feeling to have because you never really know what you have until you're just really, your last foot is about to be out the door. You walked away from something that you were as a kid, you were dreaming about being an actress, and you wanted to be in this on stage and perform. Isn't it ironic that it was something that you didn't even want to be around that ended up pulling you back in? That's what was bigger to you?
Well, I think it's like things that you don't know about yourself.
Right.
Like, I think ultimately, I am an artist and I love art, but I am more fired up by service.
Right.
And I wanted to be of service and serving these kids. And that was something I didn't, or serving people. I didn't know that when I was in college. I just wanted to perform.
Right.
And so as I grew and I got older and I had these opportunities, I realized that where my heart was in service.
Okay. Okay. Got you. Now let's fast
Where are we going
forward.
now, Sean? Where are we gonna go now?
We're going on a trip to when we first met.
Okay.
AGBU.
Okay.
I was in 5th grade, kindergarten through 5th grade. I was like, my parents knew how much I loved acting and performing, but it was so raw. It just had no structure whatsoever. No improvisational skills. I was an animal back then. I had no structure, no concept of humor, no concept of sarcasm, nothing. Then I heard that in the summer of 5th grade, that there was going to be an acting class that we could take. I remember you having, I still get PTSD from it sometimes, but you got this big drum that you bang with your hand to
My doomback. My doomback.
Yeah, your doomback. You would.
I literally, my doomback is outside right now.
No way. You still have it?
Oh yeah, I still have it, but I need to do the skin. The cover broke
Oh.
from me cramming on the doomback. But I have the drum part.
I remember in the middle of every single like exercise that we did, guys, she would just be like, "All right, done." And she just hit. She'd scream on the top floor, and she just hit the dirtbag, and I was like, "Oh my god, I love this class." At home, I didn't really have that opportunity to showcase what I really wanted to do, which was be on stage, act, stuff like that. So you were the first person who showed me that. You were the first person who basically took a pencil, a dull pencil, and sharpened it. Oh my God, I don't know if you're gonna remember this, but what was your first impression of me as a student?
I remember you as reluctant to, I mean, you were very young, but like somebody that's simultaneously drawn to and repelled by art. Like you wanted to be in it and do it. And then I would go, Sean, what about this thing? Or do that. And then you sort of would take processing time, like, do I really want to do that? Do I want to do that? I don't know what she's asking me to do. And there would be this space of like reluctance or hesitation.
Right.
And does that seem like accurate?
Yeah, it seems accurate, especially in the earlier stages, because it wasn't that the reluctance came from the fear of, because you threw me into the fire a lot. It was a lot of situations, where you didn't give me a chance. And I thank you for that, because now as an adult, I operate the best when I'm under pressure. And I can't, like, if you didn't do that, I would be a completely different human being now. I was just more obsessed with, am I going to get it right? Because
that is the face. You literally made the face that you made. That you always made. You made the face. Okay, like do it again. Let me see the face again. That's it. That's the face. That's the face. That is it.
Oh, she woke up.
Let me get her a boner. In drama schools, your point is to teach people to think on their feet,
right?
To be spontaneous, to be flexible, and so you're trying to get them to be in a state of high alert a lot, and that's part of the training. So I guess I'm glad I freaked you out a little bit.
No, I'm glad you did, because kids really need that. I think that we do have to be attentive over what the child's skill set is. We have to be really mindful of what they can and what they can do, what they can't do, what they don't want to do, and what they will do. But you just throwing all that out and just said, you have to be an animal, embody an animal. And I was just like, okay, what do you mean by embody? Do you want me to go all in, or do you want me to just like, what type of, I had so many questions in my mind about like, what's the end result? And I remember specifically, there was one exercise we did. It was that embody the animal. It was, I think, you had like was
it imaginary body?
Yes, it was imaginary body. Because you're like, choose an animal that you really like or something. And I was like, okay. And we were in the big auditorium. And I remember getting on stage, and you were just like, you had your little darbeke, you're walking around, waiting for your moment to just hit it as loud as you can. And then you said, okay, now make the noises like the animal, be the animal, walk like the animal. And I was like on stage, and I'm like, okay, so I'm going to choose a wolf because I was an idiot. I jump off stage, land, and all I hear was my pants big wide spread in between my legs, And
I remember that. Oh my God.
and I looked at you, and you looked at me, and you tried so hard not to laugh, and you're like, "Good job, keep going." And I was like,
Oh my gosh. You owned it though. You embodied the wolf. You were the animal. You just went there, you know?
"Yeah, I
You didn't
stayed
care
in
about your
character."
pants. What did you do the rest of the day? Did you borrow some pants from my
I had my
costume rack?
sweater. I had my sweater, and I just tied it around like a belt, and I just walked around. And then I had to explain this to my mom what happened, and she thought I got bullied. I was like, "No, I literally jumped off of a stage, thinking I was a wolf." And she's like, "Okay, what?" And she was freaking. I was like, "What do you mean?" She thought I was lying. I was like, "Bro, no, seriously, we had an exercise in acting."
Well, I was a wolf.
Yeah, and I was a wolf, and she just
I
looked at me.
remember you being. That's crazy. It's so weird how memory is because I didn't remember that, and you just told me. I'm like, oh my God, that's right. I do remember that. I do remember. You did grow like over time. I think by the end of things, you were. I hope you seemed more brave and more willing to just kind of go there.
Definitely. Let me drink this real quick. We're gonna take a quick little commercial break. Sponsored by no one. Shut up, bro, please. Please. Shut up. Shut the fuck up. Shut up. I'll take you to Chick-fil-A and leave you there. Bitch. I hate these birds. I'm the biggest bird. I'm the biggest bird. Fuck you. Shut up. Well, I don't understand. Why are you doing this? Hello? Oh my God. You little fuck. You fucking bastard, you. Hey! Cock and bang. This show is not sponsored by Zoom for a good reason. Fuck Zoom. Fuck you. Fuck the Zoom. Fuck the you. Fuck it, Zoom. Fuck Zoom. Fuck it, the Zoom. Zoom can suck my.
That was tough.
That
Oh my
was.
goodness.
I don't know why
My
it was happening.
computer is so tough. Sorry.
Another thing that I didn't know about you recently is that now you're a children's author. What? I was like, because I didn't know what you were doing outside of AGBU when you left. Because you left a legacy for us. You definitely left something behind for us. It was just a shame that, I don't know how it is now, because I think it's been disbanded or the theater group isn't as strong anymore. But when I just didn't know what direction you took, and you took the direction. It's so interesting now that that's part of your legacy. That now you have a children's book that you've written, and I don't understand why you're not advertising it as much. Miss AJ,
I don't
come
know
on.
how. Oh God, I don't know how. I started this new job and they were introducing me and my partner teacher's like, and here she is, and she had like a Google Slides thing with my book and my author picture, and I was like, oh my God. I think that I was like a performer who was like a reluctant performer. Like I don't feel totally comfortable, tooting my own horn. It's kind of hard for me. But when you write a book, you should talk about it. And I think it's hard for me. So Sean, you gotta hook me up. The
I got you.
millennials. I need help.
I
need
got
help
you.
from the millennials. Big
I
time.
got you. Don't worry. I will plug your Amazon page and the link to get the book at the end of the podcast.
Gosh. See, I'm a Gen Xer. We just kind of sit back and we go, whatever. And that's so bad.
Oh my God. What was the inspiration behind it?
Well, I moved from drama to special education, which is an interesting place to go because I felt like I wanted to go deeper with helping kids I wanted to make a connection between special education and drama, students with ADHD, specifically because there were a lot of kids that would be drawn to drama that they were struggling academically, and I wanted to support them. So let me just put that out for listeners. That's the connection. So I went from drama to special education. I was always looking for creative outlets. I really, really miss telling stories. As we started in the beginning, my love for theater came from a desire to be in a community, to witness stories, to be a part of stories, and to be a storyteller. And as much as I love special education, I definitely have the need to be creative. And during the pandemic, I know a lot of people struggled with it, but but there were gifts for me, and the gift for me was time. I didn't have to go to school to work there in a classroom for 8 hours. I could be online in my class, and then all of a sudden I found myself with time. I didn't have to drive, and I just started writing. And my mom passed away about 10 years ago, and I started writing stories about our relationship because she was a single mom. So I felt like, when she passed away, really our stories died. Like, who's going to tell the stories? There was no dad. I
Yeah.
don't have a sibling.
Yeah.
And I started writing, and I started a blog, and I have a website. And then I thought, what if I create a character, a special education character named after my mom? So then her name is Melly Lou. My mom's name was Meldora Lou. And Melly Lou is a fairy, and she doesn't quite fit in. And I don't think my mom fit in. And I think sometimes students that are neurodivergent, they don't feel like they do. And so she's a fairy who doesn't want to fly. Everybody wants her to fly, but she can't. She wants to keep her yellow Converse on. She wants to keep her feet on the ground.
Okay.
She doesn't like to be flying. She doesn't like to take chances. She gets really scared. She has anxiety. And so that's what I did. I started writing. So I have 3 of them, actually. One's been published, and I have 2 more in the can, ready to come out spring 2024.
Hell yeah.
They're children's books. So it's basically emergent readers. They're early readers.
Yeah.
For young kids, a picture book, and it's done in rhyming. There's a rhyme scheme.
Oh, okay. That's adorable. That's cute.
Thank you.
I think that's very inspirational. A lot of people will just, when they leave a job or they'll leave something behind that they've spent hours and hours, blood, sweat, and tears into making. And to me, that's definitely what you did in AGBU as a drama teacher. You weren't just a drama teacher. You created an acting culture at AGBU, for sure. And for you to still have bits and pieces of that, remnants of it, the basis of it, the foundation of it, and found a way to connect it to another passion that you had, that takes a massive amount of patience and a massive amount of work. And you did it. And now you're here on a podcast with me.
Wow, we've come full circle. You're gonna make me cry.
No,
oh my
please don't.
gosh. No, that's great. It is hard, but I think as artists, I mean, you yourself, we have stories to tell, and we have our passions, and our energy needs to be put forth in positive ways. And not everybody can do it. It does take a lot of energy and bravery.
Yeah.
So I try to live by my own words. I try to push myself in the same way I push my students.
What is your final kind of advice that you would give to people who are aspiring to come out of their shell, or really people who just are not there yet to come out of their shell, to be and blossom into whoever they want to be? What is your advice for the younger generation who might be struggling with identity issues now, or don't know what they want to do?
Okay. No pressure here or anything, but I'll give it my best shot. I would say to be brave. To be brave. Life isn't supposed to be perfect, and things aren't supposed to roll out in a neat and tidy way, and they rarely do. So to embrace the mess, sometimes life is chaotic, and it can be traumatic, and it can be joyful and exhilarating and all the things. And I think the more you can get used to embracing that mess and that chaos, the more you're going to propel yourself forward to places and spaces where you want to be.
Very well said, Miss AJ. Like always, it has been a pleasure to being around you, being with you. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope to see you again on this Room 104 podcast. I hope to see you anytime you want. Just come on here. We'll advertise your books. We'll talk about anything you want.
Anytime. You just shoot me an IM, and I'll be there.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. This has been Shanti. Don't forget the Monty Room 104 podcast. Miss AJ, always been a pleasure. I'll see you. You went from a drama teacher. You went from an actress to a drama teacher to a special ed teacher, and now you're an author. So,
peace out. So good seeing you, Sean.